Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. I've made several videos regarding Rogue Trader, and it seems like one comment is pretty consistent throughout all of them. How the hell do clues work in this game? I thought I clarified this with my breakdown of the Adept class, but you all made it pretty clear that you're still confused, so I thought it might be nice to make a separate video where we talk specifically about clues. So let's go ahead and dive in. So as you see, I've got Pascal, and he's your Adept that you receive as a party member, and he has an ability here called Study Enemies that allows you to place clues upon enemies. So when you click it, it's going to give you a huge area of effect where you can land. And then if we click it, you'll notice that he attempts to study multiple enemies that are around them. And some of them will have this blue icon over here that lets you know they've received a clue. So how do clues work? Well, if you go into the character screen and then look at Study Enemies, it will say that when you use this, the Adept randomly distributes stacks of clues among enemies. Now, how many clues does it distribute? Well, that's based on your intelligence bonus. You can calculate your intelligence bonus by taking the amount of the characteristic that's referenced by the bonus and then divide it by 10, rounding it down. So in the case of intelligence, I've got an intelligence of 80 right now. So if you divide that by 10, it'll be 8. So anytime I use Study Enemies, it's going to distribute 8 clues around all the enemies in that area of effect. So if we look here, this guy's got 1, this guy's got 2, this guy's got 1, this guy's got 2, and this guy has another 2. So it's just going to distribute it randomly amongst all the people in that particular area of effect. Now, once you have a clue on a particular enemy, it adds a couple of different things. First and foremost, if the Adept hits the target that has a clue, you're going to deal additional damage equal to your perception bonus plus insight. So when it comes to your perception bonus, again, you're going to take the 75 divided by 10, so that would be 7.5, and then you're rounding it down. So you're going to get a bonus of 7 damage every time you hit an enemy who has a clue. Now, how do you get insight? Well, when you place a clue on an enemy, it remains until the end of combat, unless you use an ability that takes up that clue, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But other than that, it's going to remain on an enemy until the end of combat, and it can add insight, which is a characteristic that increases your damage against studied enemies. Every time you hit an enemy who has a clue, not only are you going to deal this additional damage, but it's going to remove 1 stack of clue, and it provides +1 insight to your character. If the target dies from the attack, then not only do you get the +1 insight, but you actually get an additional +1 insight for every clue that that enemy has. So for example, if you killed this enemy, you will get a bonus of +2 insight, +1 because you hit an enemy who has a clue, and then you would get the additional +1 insight from the other stack of clue that is on it when you killed that enemy. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, once you have a clue on an enemy, it unlocks a wealth of different features that you can use based upon the Adept talents that you have selected. For example, I'm a big fan of Expose Weakness, which allows your Adept to remove 1 stack of clue from the target to decrease his dodge, parry, and armor by 10 plus twice your perception bonus. So again, my perception bonus is 7. So if you double that, that's going to be 14 plus 10, that's going to be 24. So the dodge, parry, and armor of a particular enemy will be decreased by 24% for 1 round. You can easily see how this could be extremely powerful against certain bosses. So if I go ahead and place that on here, Now you'll notice that I didn't have to use any action points. That's because I love using exposed weakness so much that I actually took a passive ability called, I don't know what it's called, but instant expose, that causes exposed weakness to cost 0 AP, because it's absolutely useful against bosses. Something else that I swear by is joint study. Until the Adept's next turn, their allies' attacks also remove clues and thus deal an additional intelligence bonus damage. So my intelligence bonus is 8. All of my allies that hit enemies who have clues will do an additional 8 damage. So this is a great way to buff your entire party. Now note, you do not gain insight from these attacks. So if allies kill enemies in this way or even damage them, it's not going to increase your insight. Your insight only increases when you damage or kill enemies who already have clues on them. So I like going ahead and selecting this. And then when I attack this enemy, excellent, you'll see I did a critical hit. But when you look at some of the statistics used to determine whether or not an enemy can dodge or parry the attack, you'll see exposed weakness here. So it's actually decreasing their ability in order to be able to do these things. Very, very useful. Usually there would be parry listed here, but I think parry is not an option when you critical hit. So otherwise it would be listed in this section. And that's essentially how you use clues. You select them on enemies, it's going to give you a damage buff and then unlock additional abilities that your Adept is able to use. Now, let me make something clear. In my opinion, it is not particularly useful to you to make the Adept a heavy damage dealer, because in order to be able to do that properly, you need a decent intelligence, because you're constantly enemies are constantly going to lose their clues, right? So you need to be able to constantly reapply those clues, and you need a high enough intelligence to be able to do that effectively. So you need at least a decent intelligence. You need a decent perception bonus to gain an advantage from having all these enemies that have clues on them to get that extra damage. But then on top of that, you also need to have a high weapon or ballistic skill, whether you're focusing on melee or ranged weapons, in order to be able to do decent damage. And the problem with all of this is, if I go into the doctrine and then you look at the list of characteristics you're going to be able to advance, you'll have an opportunity to increase these characteristics 5 times while you level up as an Adept, but you're going to have to choose between them. So if you have to split these points up between intelligence, perception, and one of these weapon skills, essentially you're going to be mediocre in 1 or 2 of these, and it's going to limit the effectiveness of your Adept. Whereas if you want to focus on just buffing and debuffing, all you really need is intelligence and maybe a little bit of perception. And so in my mind, I think it's more effective to just go all in and say your Adept is not really going to be the person blowing people up, especially because Pascal is slow as lead anyway, so it's hard for him to actually reach enemies. I prefer just making him the guy who's going to make the entire team better. And there's a bunch of different talents and abilities that we went through in Adept. I'll leave a link below to my breakdown of everything Adept can do, that based on this clue mechanic can make you very effective. But you can figure out on your own how you like using the Adept best. Hopefully this helps you. This really helped explain how the clue mechanic works and how you make use of it. If you're still really confused, leave a question down below and I'll try to answer it as best I can. Otherwise, see you all in the next video. Take care.